Hello and welcome to Intertech's Oxygen Blast event. You made a great decision to join us today to learn a little bit more about the ALM process and how you can connect operations with development for successful project implementation. For those of you joining us for the first time, Intertech is based in Eagan, Minnesota, and for the last 20 years has provided research-based, award-winning training and consulting services around the globe. Every quarter, we offer 1 to 3 Oxygen Blast events, and as the name suggests, these free events offer a chance for you to gain a brief overview or see the latest application of tools and technologies. Before we get started, I do have a couple of housekeeping items. We're using Link for the first time today, and so if you haven't used it before and are having any issues, there is a link in the chat box to help you with those troubleshooting. That brings me to my next point, and that is the chat box is visible to all attendees. So anything you type in there will be shared with everyone, so just keep that in mind as you're asking questions and making comments. Next, today's presentation is being recorded, and the recording will be sent out in our next monthly newsletter and will be posted this Friday on our website under free learning. So if you want to rewatch the presentation, share it with a friend or a colleague, that's where you can find it. For those of you just joining us, again, welcome. We're glad you can make it. Today's presentation is on ALM, Connecting Operations and Development, and is presented by Intertech's Director of Operations, Tom Helvig. Tom is an IT professional, and he has a wide range of experiences from leadership, IT management, enterprise architecture and operations, ALM, SDLC, and SME. He's a Microsoft certified trainer and has been involved in several aspects of delivering software to production. Thank you again so much for joining us. And Tom, if you're out there, I will go ahead and hand it over to you.
I am out there. Thank you very much. I'm assuming you can hear me okay. I do have the volume turned down on the free conference, so if you are trying to try and minimize feedback, so if you are trying to send messages or questions to us, please use the chat window. So what I wanted to talk about today was application development and tying in the development and the operations together. So one of the things that when I started as a developer, I was thinking application lifecycle was really the software development lifecycle process. So how does a developer take software and get it out to the real world? And broke that down a little bit, and it really starts off with the definition and the idea of what are we going to do, what are we going to develop. So someone comes up with an idea that we need to have software do something, or we need to have an application that's doing something. So creating the having that ideation out there and putting it all somewhere so you can see it is putting it in a project backlog. So I've worked in a bunch of different methodologies. My more favorite methodologies within the Scrum and so we have a product backlog. That product backlog will contain all of our stories for functionality and features within an application. So from there, what we want to do is we want to have the users and stakeholders and people that own the product ownership put their information requirements into a backlog, prioritize it, and eventually get to a point where they want to do something about it. So taking those requirements and turning them into working software is what the development side will do. And development in this case actually, in my belief, is both development and testing. So in a fairly iterative cycle that will implement everything that's in the backlog. So lather, rinse, repeat until you have some working software. on a periodic basis. We're going to be going out to production and where the value is actually realized in the software. So this process is really the SDLC. How do we take requirements from our group of users and enact them into development? And then as a young developer, I thought, okay, good, we're done. So I've published out to whatever, I've deployed, and we're good. So what's next? All this will do is create an operations backlog. There's somebody on the other side that works in the operations section. So where my servers are deployed, I'm developing on my desktop. My servers are deployed in a completely different environment, usually an environment that has much more security and separated tiers. So when it lives in the wild, stuff happens, and we want to be able to know about it. So that stuff that's happening is we want to monitor it. We want to be able to look on a periodic basis and see what is happening to our application in the wild. So this ties back, closing the loop, to being able to take what we've learned from what's happening in the wild. Are there any errors? Are we did we create an architecture that is robust enough to keep it, get the throughput that we're looking for? So we're going to come up with some actionable learning out of this. Now this is the whole life cycle, and this is how it should work. There's also other inputs to requirements of users, case studies, and usability studies and things like that. But for the most part, this is the loop that I'll be talking about today. Over time, you have questions from each of the buckets. So the users could say, I could hear, and I've actually heard this in past, is it takes me 5 minutes to load this page. So how do you respond to that? So a stakeholder says, my users are having problems with what? I don't know what my users are having problems with. I want to know what my users are having problems with. I had a chief operating officer that asked me a question saying, I want to know that our website is down before our users tell us. How can we do that? And seemingly innocent question, but actually was quite impactful, because that's in some cases how some businesses deal with it. That I find out I have an outage in production when a user calls me and tells me. So I would like to find out before they do. From the developer's perspective, creating working software. So once it's in this stage and it's in the happy confines of my development environment, I can debug it. I can look and see what's happening. I can write messages out to a file and that may or may not actually go into production, but it works on my box. So how can I get that same information into a server? How can I find out how it's really working on the server? I've heard people ask, can I just install Visual Studio on the server? So that's one way to do it. I don't ever suggest that. Also, can I log into the server? Can I see what's happening on that machine? That may be okay for a smaller type application, but if you have an enterprise application with 112 servers in there, logging into a machine is probably not going to do a lot of good for you. So developers will also ask, what's the configuration on the machine? Is it a farm thing? How do we know when we've pulled apart those DLLs onto different processes that they're going to run in the right format? What do you mean we have an intrusion prevention and intrusion detection system, and what's with this firewall stuff? So those are some of the things that happen from the development side, and understanding where it's going to live in the wild is going to help out the developer and to architect a proper solution. So from the operations side, what exactly are the testing or the development effort? What is that testing? So how can we show what is being tested? What are the acceptable thresholds? So is 5 minutes good enough? Is it too long? I don't know. So having you answer some of those questions of, how do you know what's happening, and that's where the true value of monitoring are. So also, the developers could think, oh, we'll just write it to a log file, but I've worked on an enterprise application with 112 servers on it, and 50 servers in one tier, in the app tier, 50 servers in the web tier, and sure, go find the log, but I don't know which server that's going to run on. That makes it very difficult for the operations person to go have to monitor 50 different servers. It just might not work. So that is that's kind of the questions that get answered in here. So I'm going to give a couple different scenarios which will answer some of those questions and show you some services that will help you. I go to the next slide here. So how do we know what's going on? One of the problems that happens is I get a production error. So production errors do happen. We expect them to happen. But what do you do with them? Am I waiting for a user to call in? So usually when a user calls in, that's the wrong time to try and troubleshoot, because when the error happens in production, a best case scenario, someone sees it right away and can start acting on it before that user picks up the phone and dials in and gets to a support center person that can escalate it up to the next level call center. It gets logged in as a ticket, and all that takes time. So one of the things that we're trying to do is shorten that cycle time. So part of that that we actually do have control over is what is happening on the machine at that time, and I can look at the exceptions that are being generated, and I don't have to write code to look at that. So I can set up different thresholds for viewing. So what happens when you don't solve a problem quickly? You can lose business, and that's probably the worst case scenario. So we do have several management packs that allow the real-time monitoring within System Center, and the whole purpose of this is to reduce that mean time to repair. So how long does it take for me to figure out what the issue is and get to root cause, and then provide a solution, and then fix, and then deploy that fix into production? So I'm going to flip over here to my server, and this has a little bit of it's about a 5-second lag before before it starts showing up. So, and here we go. All right. So what I have here is Windows Server 2012, and I'm going to go into the Operations Manager and load this up. So what I see here is I've actually set up an application to monitor. So we have Fabricam Fiber, a website that is on this machine. It has 2 tiers. It has a web tier and an application tier, and a SQL server. Both of those 2 middle tiers are running on the same server, and SQL servers on this box also. So here's the actual monitor view. It'll give you a fairly nice, at a glance, what's going on here. So I have my ASP web application in a state of being monitored, and I am doing some client-side monitoring. I'm not going to get into the client-side monitoring in this talk. We're more going to talk about right here. But the more applications you have in your environment, they would be listed down the side here. So in order to set this up, how did I go and create these things? So if I go out here into authoring, and I'm looking at my .NET application monitoring, and I see that I have my Fabricam website out here. So I'm just going to open that up and show you some of the properties that are part of this. So I would go out and find the websites, or you know, there's an application that I want to be able to monitor. I can add a new one. I can change the properties of them. I'll get into a little bit of this in a second. But I would have my list of parts in here that I wanted to set up monitoring for. There are some server-side defaults. Like I said, there's some client-side monitoring that we're doing. And this puts some JavaScript down on the within the application, and it'll send back some of the results. It is very, very lightweight and doesn't tell you what the user is doing. It just says on the machine outside the application. I'll put it that way. And then it can give me a summarization of how this is configured. If I go back in here to server-side defaults, I go into my, well, let's look at this first. So I'm turning on performance alerts and exception alerts. So my threshold is anything above 5 seconds will show up. So you can throttle this back and forth. I would stay out of the double-digit millisecond range unless there is something, an application that is that critical that you have to check. The one thing with monitoring is it will have an impact on your environment. How much is really up to you. If I go into my advanced settings, what I want to do is look for all exceptions, and I'm going to log everything that is in the application failure alerts area. The other thing I can do is there's some other thresholds down here. If I have an average request time that exceeds 10 seconds, just for this demo purpose, I'm going to put it down to 1,000 milliseconds. And I can go through and I can look at particular servers or groups of servers. I can have it environment-wide, which is this right now. And I will, these are the settings, I'll apply that and hit OK. So I've now set up monitoring. So again, it's just I'm looking for all exceptions and exception failure alerts. Apply that. And it's saving. Okay. So if I go back up here, I have actually made changes to this up here. So I'm back in my monitoring view, and this is what an operations person would look at on a daily basis. So I could go in here and I could say, I want to, you know, see what's going on the server. So I'm going to right-click and choose to look at the performance of this server. So I am right now looking at a week view. I have not had my server on for a full week. This server is only a demo server, so it's only been on for a couple hours today. So I can actually change the time range on this to show 7 hours instead of 7 days. And there we go. My server is essentially flatlined. It hasn't been doing a whole lot of anything. This is this collection right here with how many applications with exception events. So if I were to pick any of the other things that it's checking, average request time, and again, you can barely see it, but there is a different line that gets added here. But since the server hasn't been doing anything, you don't see the spikes that you would normally get. But this is just a way to slice and dice and look at, I can look at a month at a glance. So if I choose 30, so I might have to switch to days first. 30 days, and it will give me the full view of what my application is doing over time. And some of these are really helpful when it comes into, does my application, what's the life cycle of my application? That on a particular day, do I get hit hard? Do I get, is it on the weekend, at Friday night? Do I have to, how do I need to balance my infrastructure to manage the load that I have on the server? What type of elasticity do we need to get from the cloud? How many servers do we have? Do we have too much, not enough? When do we get more? When do we take away servers? Those are all valid questions, and the one way to find out is the how do you know question is by doing some monitoring. So I'm going to close my performance, and I'm just going to stay here and go back to the slide. Okay, hopefully you're seeing the slide. Next thing that we have is operational incidents. How do we communicate? I've been on several production calls. The dreaded conference call that goes for ever. So it goes until the incident is done. So I've never spent so much time on mute than I have on an incident call when you're trying to scramble and do stuff. So what's one of the problems with that incident call is that's the common form of communication. That's the mechanism that we use to communicate together. Does it work? Yes, it works. Is it, we've all played the telephone game, and we've all been, doing something and while somebody else is talking, or vice versa, you're talking to them and they're not there, and there's no way to know it. So what that does in some cases is it creates some definite communication churn. So having a single set of tools or well integrated tools will really help facilitate that communication between operations and development. So and then you can use some things that are similar, like the artifacts for testing and looking at what is that error that I hit in production. So how can an operations person who knows a ton about how the servers are working and how the application works within that server environment, that they can go out and see what is happening on the in the environment and try and communicate that back to the developer. So one of the ways that we have is with a management pack called a Team Foundation Server Connector and AviCode. Let me flip over. I'll give this a second to paint. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. I'm back where I was on my monitoring site. I'm just going to jump over to, there's actually a way that you can monitor what's in TFS. So I've installed the TFS connector. And one of the features of TFS connector is a work item synchronizer. And that will take it'll do two things. It'll add a new work item for a new issue that comes up, and it'll also take and update existing ones. So it'll go through this process until it's gone. And if I go look in here and see that there's a alert set up for, I've I see an alert and I've assigned it to engineering. What's sitting in the in that bucket? So engineering is just the development part of that cycle. So what is new? So I go, what are the past alerts in the past 24 hours? Right now I have nothing. Again, from what you saw before, my server hasn't been doing anything. And what state am I in? So again, my TFS connector is in a healthy state, so it is working and doing stuff. So what kind of stuff is that doing? Let me go into the authoring part. And in this management pack, there is the TFS work item synchronizer or synchronization. And I'm actually connecting to a team project in TFS for FiberCam Fiber. If I open this up, and what it's doing is it's telling me that this is my name of the collection that I have. So DevOps all 8080 under TFS. So that's the name of my server. I have this resource pool, and this is the account that I'm using to connect. So, and if I go out here to TFS, so if I switch hats, and now I'm a developer, that if I'm in that I go out and look at this server. This is DevOps all 8080 TFS. It's the same TFS. So I connect to it. There's only one team project under there. The collection is called DC. So if I flip back to Operations Manager, it tells me that exact same thing. So my project is under FiberCam Fiber. Since there's only one there, it only shows one. My area path is FiberCam Fiber, and I would have multiple projects in here if that's what I wanted. But since this is the only application in TFS, and this is the only application that I'm monitoring, it works out really well. I should have hit cancel on that one, but I didn't make any changes, so I think I'm okay. All right, so what I have is this. I have it set up to put and sync or put work items in and sync them with TFS from here. What's it actually doing under the covers is we're going to go look at that. So right now, by default, I'm just going to go into my override section of authoring. Since I don't have that many overrides, I can show you where to go look for this. I'm just going to open these two up. And I said there was two rules that get created. One is the new work item that has normally a default value of 30 or 300 seconds, which is 5 minutes, and we've override that to 60 seconds for demo purposes. So every 5 minutes it'll sweep through, find out what items have been added, and add them actually to TFS work items. The other one is the synchronization. Every 15 minutes, it will sync the existing ones. It keeps track of the GUIDs, and then will update things back and forth. So if you don't currently have an override for it, or do want to override, if 15 minutes is not enough, or you could go for longer, that I can actually go set these up and create a rule for what's happening in here. In this case, I have a few management packs out there. I have a lot of rules that are available to me. I can search for them. So I just typed in TFS on the top, and I see I have my two rules right here. So if I open them up, that I can see the information about my rule. I can view what it's set at. By default, it's 900 seconds. It does a delta sync every 24 hours. I can put information in here that would get populated as necessary for both the product and the company. and then I can look at the overrides. So, and here's where I set that. So if I set a different value, it would show in there. I'm going to cancel this. You can also view a summary of all the overrides that are in here. So it assumes the default except for if it shows up in the override. So I would go through and configure my TFS work item. Again, this is the normal synchronization process. Oops. And this is the creation. So same thing. I can look at my configuration. So every 300 seconds by default. And my override is at 60 seconds. So when I create a new item, then it should show up in 60 seconds. So I am going to go to monitoring. I'm going to look at my web application. I am sitting here looking at my Fabricam Fiber website, and I'm looking at my active alerts. I have none right now. If I'm in Visual Studio, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go look at my work item types of operational issues. I'm going to do a quick query, and I see that we do actually have a couple operational issues that are work items for this application. One is resolved, one is accepted. So accepted means it's in the process of being fixed, that I actually acknowledge that it's a problem and it will be fixed by engineering. So how can we make one of these happen? So let's have a demonstration here. I go out to the Fabricam website, and it is churning away. It's starting up my website. There we go. And I want to log in. So today I'm Ken Sanchez. Spinning up my services. You can see that down here in my CPU. It did spike a little bit. So that was just my services starting. I clicked login and it did some work. So I'm going to force an error. I just happen to know that the reports section will not work. So I click on reports, and sure enough, something bad happened. So as a user, I see this. I hopefully don't see all of this. I just want to see the yellow screen of death saying there's something bad happened. So what I do is go into .is. I go back into SCOM and look at my active alerts, and I have 3 of them in here. So there are 3 exceptions that were thrown. So, and you can iterate down and look a little bit at what these errors are and get a little bit of information about them. You know, they all update. I'll pick this one. And here is my alert that happened. So at some point in time, I got an alert less than a minute ago. There's generic product knowledge. There's pretty generic company knowledge. History, it just happened. And my alert context, I'll get to this in a second. And then I had some custom fields that I can add. So if I go out here and look for this, I can say, well, I don't exactly know what happened, but here is, I got a system null reference exception. So something was set to, the object reference was set to an instance of an object. So not set to an instance, I'm sorry. Here's the MVC, page. I'll just open this, let that cook for a second, and say that this is the extent of information that I get. So as an operations person, that's not necessarily enough to diagnose what happened. So I click on this link, and it opens up AviCode. Within AviCode, which is part of SCOM, it shows me my exception and says, some things about it. So I can go read about, what class is this exception in. So it's the just .NET exception event. This, by the way, was done without any instrumentation in the code itself. It was a component that was put on the web server itself to as a collector and pushes it back to the collection point. And so I'm getting this information from the collection point. I can see that my object with the reference that wasn't set, it has the employee model. So the employee report view model, get summary, get customer summary. And one of these actually has a bad record in it. There's current customer, there's current customer, there's current customer. At the bottom, there is no current customer. So that's the one thing that I happen to know is failing. And if I were to look at some of these things, I can expand out and see that here's what happened. The MVC action was actually trying to go to the employees. The controller was the report. I was looking at an empty collection, etc. So I can see what some of this data that's coming through will show me. You can also look on the performance counters for anything that's being looked at, so the percent processor time, what's happening on the server, and that's the processor time. Let's go to the whole processor and apply, and that should kind of mimic what was happening on the machine. Here's where I started up the application. Here's where I clicked go and got that error right here. So I can see that it's not flatlined all the way across the top. My server looks fairly healthy. It just got an error. So I can say, yep, this is probably enough where I'm going to want to raise this as an issue. So this is the get customer summary. I don't have to remember that. I'm just going to use it for my purposes here. I'm going to put it in the customer field, get customer summary. And I really think that this is a engineering problem. So I'm going to choose assign it to engineering. I hit OK, and it shows the state here as assigned to engineering. So I'm going to switch my hats. I'm now on the developer side. I go out here, I'm just going to refresh my query, and sure enough, I got a new operational issue because of that TFS new work item creation thing, and it just picked it up before 60 seconds, which is perfect. So if I open that up, I can see this is pretty much the same error that my operations person saw. My custom properties, here's the custom property that I just entered in. Any product knowledge that we have, the history of it. In TFS, there's no history. So the link, there's actually that, if I had to click on this link, it would go to the same page that we were looking at. Developers should have access to AviCode, and then no attachments. So I'm going to say, yes, this looks like a problem. And I'm going to accept this and save it. So once I save it, I can say I'm going to assign this to me as the administrator. So now if I rerun my query, it should show up as assigned. So I left the other one as accepted to show the difference. Close this and go back into SCOM. I open this back up. It says assigned to engineering. Hang on. It hasn't updated yet. Then there we go. So it just showed up. I didn't do anything. It showed up as acknowledged after that job went by. And I can see that the alert status changed to acknowledged. The history is somebody, the administrator, changed it to assigned. And the ticket was updated. So I do have ticket ID revision number 3, and that's how you can go through and figure out what's happening in here. So I'm at a state now where I can say, all right, I want to close this alert. I don't need to keep track of it anymore. So, and that's the idea, the workflow of a person. An ops person would be able to go through these, and now that it's put into engineering, they have the ball, so they can figure out now what to do with it. So I now have to work these other 2 issues, so, and whatever the case may be for those. And that's it. Let me switch my slides, or switch over to slides. Okay. So I showed you how you can go in and get a little bit of information from AviCode. It was pretty basic. AviCode, without doing anything, will capture some of those parameters. There are masks you can put on it. We did, when we used it in production, we would mask anything that followed the word password. So if it showed up in there, we wouldn't see that what the SA password was, or whatever. User sending their credentials through, we would mask that. We didn't necessarily want the operations folks to have access to those passwords. So that will give you an idea of what's happening. You can upload your PDB files to AviCode, and it will help you link into that version of source code. But what about those tougher bugs? What about those things that happen in production that are just bare to try and figure out where things are at? So again, I've said it and I've heard it. I've never actually done it, where installing Visual Studio on the server itself would be, not a great idea. So your application behaves differently. It's just not a good idea. There is something that you can do. You can put IntelliTrace out there. There is a runtime version of IntelliTrace, and for anybody that's using the Visual Studio Ultimate Edition, that capture from IntelliTrace can be downloaded to your machine, and you can step through it, what's actually happening in production. So you can take a scenario that is running. When you turn it on, instrument, you can hopefully reconnect or recreate the problem and find it in there. I'll give you an example of what that's going to look like. I'll also give you a further example of doing AviCode workflow. How to take those issues in AviCode and suppress them so you don't see them again, and change them to a different type of status. So I'll do a demo of IntelliTrace in the workflow. I'll switch my machines. And I'm back into my operations manager. Excuse me. So I know that something bad happened. I don't exactly know where. I mean, the operations guys are not developers. The developers are not operations guys. You do have the option of going to the app diagnostics itself, System Center, Avicode, app diagnostics, all the same thing. So if I hit refresh on this, that I see my error right here. So MVC rendering, null, reference exception. So again, this is the exact same event that we saw before. And I'm looking at it. It doesn't matter if I'm a developer or if I'm a operations person. I can get a bunch of information from this. But it may not be enough. So this does give me, actually probably enough to troubleshoot it, but we'll say I don't know how to do that. There's some funky bug that I'm going to need to really dig into. So let's leave that where it is. On this server, I'm going to minimize to the desktop. That, as I mentioned, I have these management packs out there. This is the one I'm making the most use of. And then IIS 8. If I go out to my root drive, I've created a folder out here called IntelliTrace, and I really just copied the runtime folders for IntelliTrace Profiler out here. So there is a process in doing this. If you have Visual Studio Ultimate, you have the files right there on your server. You create a directory that it has it running in, and for I also created another folder for where I'm going to put the logs. In order to make this a little easier for me, I wrote some scripts to help me out. This script is, if I open it up, that what I'm doing is I'm importing the Visual Studio IntelliTrace PowerShell module, and I'm going to start collection silently for this application. Oh, I shouldn't be doing that. There we go. For this application, the Fabricam Fiber Web, and I want to put all my oops, I'm sorry. This is the collection plan, which would be an ASP.NET trace, and I'm going to put all the logs in the trace file, or the iTrace logs directory. So, and then I'm going to run a get status on it on this particular application pool. So that's really what it's doing. I'm essentially loading up a library, starting the trace collection, telling it where to put all the files, and then getting a status on what that is to see if it worked. So stopping the trace is roughly the opposite. So I import the module, I stop IntelliTrace collection, and I do a status just to see what it's doing. So let's do that right now. If I start, oops, if I start, there we go. And there's the status. So it's telling me that tracing has started. So what I'm going to do is go to this website. I can log off. Log back on again. And I can click around, do whatever I want to. Again, I know that this is going to bomb, so for demo purposes and time purposes, I'm just going to click on reports, show it bomb, and I'm going to stop tracing. There we go. So there's the status. Stop tracing. I should have a file now on my machine called in the iTrace logs. So that was just created. if I open this up into, well, if I double click on it, so I would pull this down to my machine really, send it across the wire. They do get big fast, so just be aware of that. I pull it down to my machine and I'm able to step through this file. So this tells me what was happening on the server. It's telling me everything. So my machine went to sleep a little bit, so it is aborting some threads and kind of cleaning itself up and trying to get ready to go. So I do have, these issues in here where I have null reference exceptions. I'm going to go down to this one and just hit start debugging. So, and I just wanted to show you what I'm doing. So this is on my machine. Granted, it's on the same server as the code is running on, but I'm actually running in a like a ring fence environment. That there is nothing that it's going out for. It's all contained in that IntelliTrace file. So, and if you haven't gone into IntelliTrace and seen all the things that it's capturing for you, it's actually quite interesting. So it has some ADO.NET or some entity framework stuff that it's pulling. I will get exceptions that it handles for me. So it throws one and catches them. I can step through. So if I go F10, and there we go. So I'm stepping through this user's interaction to see what they have been doing. So I can step through the code just like it's working in production. The one thing you don't get, if I can get down to some code here, is all of the state that you think you do have when you're in normal debug mode. So you get most of it. I am going to try and, so sorry for jumping around here. I'm trying to find the actual error. Object's already named. And no, that's not it. Okay. And it will give you a lot of the information that you wouldn't normally get through AviCode. It will actually step you through the line of code, which I'm not able to put my finger on. At this point. Well, what I was trying to get to is, there we go, here's some code. Notice if I hover over it, I don't get the actual object that's being built down here. So I can get a little of it. So if I go F10, so it says my assigned tickets. So it will give me a little bit of information in there. But from that, I can actually say, I can step through the code and say, oh, I know exactly where that error is. So going out, I'm going to stop debugging. I'm going to go to my Team Explorer, run a new query on my operational issues. And I'm going to say that it's not only did I figure it out, but I know where that it's going to be work in progress. This is an issue where the current customer is blank, null. And I can schedule this for an actual deployment. I call up my friends on the operations side, and they say, great, it's going to be scheduled. Again, they would go to their view of what's in engineering. And apparently that updated already. And in Hobby Code, the other thing I can say is to clean this up. There is no automatic update within here. So whenever I see this again, if someone clicks on the report button, this error will happen every time. So I don't want to have to see these all the time. In fact, if I hit refresh, it should have happened a couple times. So there. Happened a couple times. If I go into this property and I say, okay, I've seen this event before, I'm going to change its status to new, or from new to something else. So I'm going to set this. I'm going to change it to reviewed. The report bug, I'll give it a name, some detail description, and I'm going to set an expiration date because they told me that they were going to have this fixed on April 1st. So I'm going to say, that's great. I'm going to change my time to 8 a.m. and I will apply these to all my previous events, but after April 1st at 8 a.m., it'll no longer change this to a reviewed status. So it's going to go, right now this is at new. It's going to update all of these. And when it's complete, you're going to see that, there we go, it's reviewed. My status over here is reviewed, and I don't necessarily have to see them. So I can filter by the event. I press OK and do a search, and now that's gone. So what I want to do is I want to keep this as clean as possible. So I just suppress that message because I know it's going to be fixed on the April 1st release. So I go through and suppress that, and now I can clean up my site. On April 1st, rest assured, that will pop up again. There are a couple other things you can search on within the application. If there are a lot of issues in here, I would suggest grouping by the problem. And I usually sort descending on count. So you can find that it may, and this is an exception that's unhandled. This is a handled exception. So right now there is some problem with logging in that that it's trying to go and log in and do this job, and it's failing. So there's something bad that's happening here. So I would either go fix it or suppress it for when it is fixed. But I can continually go through the application diagnostics and manage this, and hopefully, because if it's a small list, you'll be able to get through it a lot quicker. So you can look at it by computers. In this case, I only have one computer. I've seen it in very large farms. I can set up multiple applications. There is a client, and then there's the application tier. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get access to your application, monitor it, and be able to provide a good link back to the development group. I'm going to switch to my slides. Thank you. So what I've done is I've gone through and looked at ways that we can tie the application diagnostics and the development teams together. After a quick couple slides, then I'll open it for questions. Thank you. If anybody does have questions, please type them in the box. I am still getting a little feedback loop with the conference call as well, but I'll be projecting to both. So if you answer or ask it in the chat, I will answer it aloud. So John, there's a question. Is there a hook to have it create sync with a tool other than Visual Studio? So actually what this is doing is it's connecting into TFS directly. So if I were to go open up TFS and go into my project and view my work items, that the work items I actually have are TFS work items. So from the development side, the developer tool that's open all the time on their desktop is going to be Visual Studio, and so that was my portal into that. From the operations side, it's probably going to be Operations Manager. TFS is just the go-between to where it is. I think there are probably other mechanisms to do that. This is the TFS connector, and you would go to yep. So there are other management packs, and you can go out to the there's a marketplace for management packs that you can look to see what they have. My only experience has been with TFS though. Any other questions from folks out there? I will hang on the line if there is others that come up. Otherwise, thank you very much, and I appreciate your attendance.